Hello, and welcome to the DCIFF Film Chat Podcast. I'm Erin DeVos, and I'll be your host for this season. Join us for insightful interviews that explore the work of up-and-coming independent filmmakers from all over the world. If you're passionate about film and keen to learning about the creative process from the future cinema greats, this podcast is a must-listen for you. Our mission is to provide listeners with the engaging and informative conversations about successful and innovative films, including features, shorts, documentaries, animation, and web series from across the globe. The DCIFF Film Chat Podcast is a unique opportunity for independent filmmakers to have their voices heard in a way no other film festival can provide. You can listen to the DCIFF Film Chat Podcast on all podcast platforms or visit our website at DCIFF-indie.org/DCIFF-podcast. Thank you. Hello, Film Chat fans. I'm your host, Erin DeVos, and this episode I am speaking with the filmmaker Michael Masarof on his film, The Woman from Hamburg. This conversation was super fun and also coming off of our filmmakers brunch on the last day of DCIFF 2024. And we had such a great conversation. And my producer, Zandria Bates, was also on the episode to join me to ask questions. Without further ado, let's dive in. Welcome, Michael, to the DCIFF Film Chat Podcast. We are on our last day of the film festival, but last but not least, we are interviewing you. But wanted to welcome you again here to the film festival.
Thanks.
Do you mind just sharing a little bit about yourself and your nominated film?
Yeah, my film is called The Woman from Hamburg. It is short film. It is a big story in a short time period. The film is adapted from a short story, which is based on a true story that's written by a Polish writer named Hannah Kroll, and it's about a Jewish woman who is in 1943 is taken in by a Polish couple and hidden, obviously during the Holocaust to save her life. And in the process of being hidden there, she gets pregnant by the husband and has the child. And later on in life, the child is raised by the Polish couple, and later on in life, the child tries to find her real mother. I'm really laughing because it's such a big story that it's that's 7 feature films in one. But actually, I left out a part, which is that maybe that's a spoiler that I'll leave out. So there's another part that I'm not telling you.
Okay.
Yeah. There you
go. Let's say so. Yeah, there's different layers to it.
Yes.
And you mentioned that's a true story. Is this family story, or how did it come to light?
No, and that's actually an interesting question because a lot of times people, especially this subject matter, do have relations, family relations, or someone's told them the story. I literally just read the short story quite a long time ago that the true story is based on, and it's like nonfiction short story, so I knew that it was true. Mm-hmm. But I think the writer changed the names, but when I read it, I was like, this is kind of insane, even when it comes to like stories about the Holocaust, which obviously there's tons of stories about people getting pregnant, people, hiding and all this sort of like iconographic things that happen in these kind of stories, or really any story that is about, someone in a dangerous place trying to be rescued and what are the choices that they make. Like when I was writing the film, I was thinking of Ukraine right now, but yeah, so my relation to it is just that I was really, really interested in the short stories way of telling the story. And I was given the opportunity to make a short film about the subject matter of the Holocaust. So that's how it came together. But yeah, I don't have family. I mean, all of my family came to the United States in the 1800s, like also escaping from persecution, but not by the Germans, by the, Russians.
So related to that and the story of the Holocaust and such like that. So, there's so many different interpretations, as you said, because one thing that I'm thinking of, or one story that stands out to me, is always Anne Frank and like kind of her journey through the Holocaust. So your film has such a unique angle because not only is it the secrecy of hiding away because of persecution, but also being pregnant at that same time. So I thought that was an interesting angle to take on compared to other movies and films. And what would you say you would want the key message for your audience to take away from this film?
Yeah, I think you just hit on something important too, is that I was interested, like I had mentioned before, about when I read the short story, I felt like the subject matter was similar, but also the way it was told is different. But you're right. I mean, one huge aspect of the film that I was really attracted to, even though, yes, it's the story that's ascending the Holocaust, is the idea that there was this woman who's pregnant and there's another woman saving her. And then there's a daughter that's born from them, kind of like a surrogate mom and a real mom. And I think like just a story of like three women who are like basically, to use more blunt term, screwed
Yeah.
like in life, find a way to like all three of them get through it. And it's sometimes it's not even like a sort of massive, I mean, they're doing very big things, but also it's sort of like done in a way that they're just doing it. And I think, that's also was fascinating to me, is that like the everyday lives of human beings, that they can have so much that they're up against and somehow get through it. And in this case, it was three women. And I was really interested in that subject matter because I do think, I don't know, you see a lot of movies about how men do that, and I'm a man, so I was just like, this is, there's something really strong about the three female characters in this story and in the movie that I wanted to tell, and they reminded me of people in my life too. I was like three sisters and a mom, obviously. I was like, they're all pretty like strong-willed people, so I was like, and a wife, I guess. So yeah, all strong-willed. So I was like, yeah, I want to use like pay tribute to them. So
Yeah. No, definitely. And so thinking,
and I didn't answer your other question.
oh,
Just,
go for it. Yeah.
I don't remember actually what it was.
Oh.
Because I answered your first question, and then you asked me a second question. I don't remember anymore.
Oh, now I'm trying to remember my question. Let's see. I think it was around, the key message you want
Oh,
for
yes.
the audience.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard question. Another aspect of the film thematically too is the idea of questions that go unanswered and things that are harder to explain than they are in real life. So I guess in some ways, like, I don't want my film to be confusing, but I do think that one takeaway is nothing is as simple as it seems in Hollywood. And to be honest, like, I think in this generation of Hollywood filmmakers and independent filmmakers, that is a bigger part of it. I wasn't the first one to think of that idea. I think so many filmmakers now are telling stories that Hollywood had never seen before, like whether it's about people that we've never seen before on screen, but also just the way the stories are told. They're so much more complicated. It's not like, okay, this is black and that's white, and this is what it's like, and this is how people react when this happens, and which is sort of like the history of Hollywood, especially when it comes to like war movies. It's like, that's the bad guy, this is the good guy, everyone just, and then everyone feels good at the end about it. But I think that is one takeaway from this, is that like things are messy, like life is messy, and sometimes people go to the movies because they want to get away from messy life. But I guess I make movies like I emphasize that life is messy. I want to remind you that things aren't as simple as they are, and especially when it comes to this sort of subject matter, where like whether it's Holocaust or slavery or anything sort of that's traumatic, historical, people, it passes on, it keeps going, and just because, there's, and again, I'm not trying to say there are no happy moments, but there are happy moments, but people live with this. And I think it's important for people to realize that.
Yeah.
I mean, the people who are going through it realize that. And I mean, it's not necessarily for them, but hopefully it helps them too. But I think just so the audience is like, nothing is just over, it's like things keep going and we should be reminded of it. So.
Yeah, no, and even to piggyback off that thought is, really into the industry itself, like in the sense of like the creative process that we go through to try to develop these stories. And yours, in a way, seems like a recreation, but also adding like your own spin because of the personal connections that you have to that. Would you like to share like the types of creative process going through the film?
Yeah, no, it's funny. When I was fundraising for the film, occasionally I was like, "We're like the characters in the movie. We have to get through." And I was like, I just comparing myself raising money for this film to a Holocaust survivor. Great, but I was like,
No, but being
but it felt that way. I was like, yeah, like this is really, really freaking hard, and like you have to just like keep going through failure or hard times and figure out a way to get through it, and and that's part of the spirit of, I guess, these characters in the movie. But yeah, I mean, it's part of the spirit of the filmmaker, and it's hard because I think I went to film school, to graduate film school at NYU, which is like one of the best film schools in the world, and like there's so many talented people who went to school with me, and a lot of them stopped making movies or never made movies after film school because it's like it's really hard. Not only is it hard to do it, but like money wise, it's really like both aspects of it. Like I mean, even if you handed someone money and said go make a film, it's not just like, oh yeah, that's easy, let me do A, B, C, and D. Like the process, even when you have the money, the process of getting the film made is like war. I mean, I'm sure you guys know from making films or being on film sets. It's literally like going to war, and even with all the money in the world, it's a challenge. And there's a lot of personalities and a lot of people are in the trenches together. So you have to persevere. And yeah, I mean, I think making this film definitely, I mean, I made a feature before this and that was a lot of work and this was a lot of work and the period aspect of it was a lot of work and making those decisions around how to present the period aspect of it was a lot of work and important to sort of like check in with people and make sure the decisions you're making are the right decisions. And the historical aspect of it obviously is really important. So yeah, I mean, I definitely chose a pretty challenging film to make, and I'm glad it worked, that it went, worked out well, and I'm proud of it. But yeah, I mean, it's filmmaking is not easy, and just being sort of positive and as much as you can, and hoping for what you're doing is the right thing. Because I think a lot of that is like you're just sort of like, okay, I think I'm doing this right. Like you have to listen to people, but also you have to kind of listen to yourself and be like, this is going to be okay. Like you're not just like a complete idiot. Like you don't know what you're doing. Like you just have to have that sense of it because sometimes in this film, I definitely showed it to a bunch of people for notes and there was like all over the map of different notes. Some people are giving me something completely like, I'm like, that's not the film I'm making. So knowing that the through line of it, I think is important.
Mhm. Oh, definitely. Yeah. And being able to persevere, as we keep saying. And then you also mentioned talking about like how budgeting, like it's really hard and kind of like the fundraising aspect of it. What advice you would give to aspiring filmmakers who are just starting out?
hmm I was going to say, there's the Bob Dylan line, like, there's no success like failure, and failure is no success at all.
Well
But
said.
that's
Bob Dylan.
sometimes I hear that. Like, no, I mean, if you're a up and coming filmmaker, I think one of the big things is to, like I just said before, is like to have like that through line and be like, I know what I'm doing is what I want to do. Because I think if you start getting things in your head of other people, then that will derail you. And I think one of the big things, I mean, obviously there's different levels of filmmakers. You're like, I'm going to make Marvel movies, and maybe you should just like think about watch a lot of Marvel movies and like and think about that and keep doing it because that might lead you that down that road. But I think in the sort of I'm more from like the old school like in American independent film cinema, which may be dying, but the idea was like you have a voice and you just try to tell that voice and you want to push that through no matter what. And I think actually as I like gotten older and felt more like I don't know. I was like, what am I doing? I think I tried to like embrace it more because I know that if that's all sort of in some, not to make that depressing, but it's all you have. It's like like you have your story and your voice. So hopefully people want to hear that and you have a perspective that people want, changes people's lives. So for me, I guess that's my advice is like, if you really want to make sort of cinema then or films, like keep doing what you believe in, as hard as it is. uh it sounds really like trite, but I do think that. And I think a lot of people actually who are in this business who are just starting out do have that. It's like they're like super driven, and sometimes I'm like, damn, I wish I was that driven.
Yeah.
Like or that like people can get like really like this is the greatest thing ever, and like I'm sometimes not good at that, like being like I'm good at talking about my project, but I'm not good like just like completely just kind of be like, no matter what I do is the most brilliant thing that anyone's ever seen. I'm just because I'm too much of a self doubter to think that. But yes, I mean, at the end of the day, the answer to that question would be keep going and listen to your voice and don't listen to what other people are trying to tell you to fit their voice into. And actually, in that same way, I remember like in film school, someone was like, "Oh, you should tell the story you know." Which, yes, like that is the most old school advice from like when you're even in like a kid and you're writing short stories. But I do actually think that's smart. Like to say like tell stories that you're familiar with, because people I think when they're telling me ideas, they're like, and then I have an idea about this great and you know huge thing like the woman from Hamburg in some ways. But I think the smaller, more personal story that is probably more interesting. And actually, in the woman from Hamburg, the one thing I'll say about it too, kind of back to an older question you asked, is that it is intimate. It's like the intimacy of a bigger film. So
Yeah.
I like purposely was like, this is sort of my version, like Michael Masarof's version of Holocaust film, which is like all interior, all sort of in rooms, like this sort of interior, intimate life, which I think is sort of, I mean, I don't know how exciting it is, but I think it's my calling card. Like I want to get inside people's minds, so that's sort of, that's so find what you do and do it well and then keep going, I guess is my advice.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good. And to be able to, just keep going through it all.
To take it back just a teeny bit. So there's these normal situations happening under the Holocaust, and I always call like those kind of things filters, emotional filters.
Mm.
And so my question for you as a storyteller, as a filmmaker, what are some narrative filters that you like to use in your work?
Wow, that's a good question. So you're saying like the filter is the world that the film playing out in?
Yeah, well, it's kind of like I kind of like I guess a narrative filter, because the Holocaust is essentially like the overall
Yeah,
arching
yeah,
emotion that you want
yeah,
people to have. Like
yeah,
that's the
yeah,
world.
yeah.
And then we have all the things that happen normally under it. And at
Hmm.
the end of the day, this is true for all stories.
Yeah,
We all live life, even if it's just eating. But let's say like you're eating as a hostage. You're a hostage.
yeah,
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 that's
yeah,
the
yeah,
filter.
yeah, yeah.
So it's like, what kind of story?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I do think that I kind of mentioned this before, but the Holocaust is the world, and that's like the setting of this piece, and then it brings the stakes obviously higher, but then what is going on? Those are also really high stakes. That like it's not just like, oh, we're hiding you, and then you're gonna leave, goodbye. Like maybe there's a few people who might see you, like Anne Frank, like this woman actually is literally, and actually I remember reading, thinking it before I wrote the story, writing the script. It was like there's something really like intense about and it's in the film. Like imagine you're pregnant, which I obviously, man, not gonna be pregnant, and like, but like pregnancy probably really is hard and sucky, and then it's sort of like, but then you're pregnant inside like a wardrobe, a closet, like where you're like throwing up or doing the things that pregnant people do, and at times you have to be hidden. So I was just like that idea of itself is insane to me, but and that's in the film a little bit. But I guess the filters thing, I actually don't think filters wise I'm interested. I like more lower stakes things. So for me, I think maybe this is a departure from the kind of like the feature I made is very more like when people say that low stakes. Like I remember someone actually gave the film a bad review because they were like, "Well, nothing kind of happens," and I was like, yeah, "That's the point of the movie." But this is like everything happens in this movie. So I don't know. I think I jump around a little bit, but I do. Again, I think one of the filters just like how humans think about each other and how they react to things. Like I guess I'm interested in the psychology of people, and especially like the psychology again of like what you think people are like, and maybe in cinema people are like a certain way, and I think they're maybe like that, or Plato's whatever. It's because you want people to be heightened, and you want sort of like the hero and the villain. I think a filter for me is like finding out whether it's set in a giant, a very high stakes world or a lower stakes world, like finding the where people are most human and where you think again like the subversive view of how when we watch cinema certain people are supposed to act this way. And again, I think actually cinema has changed in that way, that there are more people who have that filter, which is like you expect this but it's not that, it's more human, and I think that's great. And I mean, I'm not the first person to think of that, but I think just growing up watching Hollywood movies for so long, and like especially like the 90s, I don't know, there's a lot of like bullshit. So I was like, how do we find the truth? And again, not the only person to do that and the only person doing that, but I think I'm very interested in authenticity and finding truth. And actually, one of this sort of like a deeper dive in this, but one of the things that was hard about this film actually is that because it was, there and living in Poland in 1943, in the 40s, it takes place over many years, but I was like, okay, should it be in Polish? But then I was like, I want this people to speak English in this movie with an accent. And that was like a choice I kind of tried to make quickly, because if I thought too much about it, I would like drive me crazy. But then in making those choices and directing those actors, sometimes it was like, obviously we're like, I'm directing you guys in a scene. It's like talking, and today I'm like, okay, I know what authentic seems like today. Like I hang out with people today, but I've like never hung out with people in 1943. So as a director, I was like, I really wanted to make sure that things felt real, but also that, it is a movie that's heightened. So it's a really, from a filmmaker standpoint, getting to the place where you feel like you're telling something that's truthful is hard sometimes.
Mhm.
And I have to say, just a shout out to a great filmmaker, Richard Linklater. I think I don't think films are like his, but he's a filmmaker, I think, who I've ever seen his films, but he does, and my film's nothing like his films, this film. But Richard Linklater, I think, is really great at creating like truth in his films and authenticity. And in our movie, in the one from Hamburg, there was like a couple of more like European world cinema filmmakers who we looked at. Terrence Davies, who made these really, really much more intense than my movie dramas of like his personal childhood, like trauma growing up in England as like a gay man, which was they're really great films. And we kind of like modeled the look of our film off his movies. And then also the filmmaker Chantal Ackerman, who is also makes very like strange kind of beautiful films. And and that are authentic, but also like heightened. So I guess those are, people I look to. But yeah, that's a really good question.
One more. So, I always like to do parallels, universal parallels that the main character and, you want the audience to understand, but also with you as, you're going through, I just imagine as a filmmaker and a writer, watching it come to fruition, the parallels that you didn't realize that you had. And I was just questioning, well, my question is like, what parallels do you have? Whether it's with the film, whether it's with like the character.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think, and sort of similar to the question you asked, and I guess it is a really good question because people want to be like, why are you personally, related to this film, or how did the parallels go? I mean, again, it is like a film about women, and I'm not a woman, but I think part of it is that yeah, I'm Jewish, and like I didn't have Holocaust survivors in my family, but I do think there's something to be said about like the Jewish people of like, okay, how do we keep going through crap and get to the other side? So I was like, part of me is sometimes when I'm like, think about that. I'm not deeply, but sometimes I do think about that. And I'm like, okay, keep going. Cause like it's like 2000 years. No, I'm joking. But, from what, like in Big Lebowski, like 2000 years from Moses to Sandy Koufax. And so, yeah, in that way, I was thinking a little bit about like just kind of like keep going because that's sort of what we've done. But yeah, other than that, I don't know how much, and like we talked about how do you make films to keep going. But I've never been hidden in the closet. If anything, in some ways, like as a human being, as my existence, I probably should feel very grateful because like I've lived in a very peaceful, in the scheme of things, peaceful time, and like haven't had any sort of challenges like remotely close to these people. So reflecting on that and thinking about, I guess, looking at the story and being grateful that living at the time that I live, which is still a very hard time for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And, but in the scheme of things, I guess we're safe for now.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds creepy.
That was
creepy. That was a creepy ending to the podcast for now.
I mean, that's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question.
That was a good question. That was like definitely, those are really like things I like. If you told me before I came here to think about, like those are really good questions to think about. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Well, I guess kind of related to it. Is there anything that we didn't ask you that you wanted to share?
One big thing is like trying to figure out this film. Again, it's has the background of the Holocaust, but I think I mentioned this earlier. But really, like trying to figure out like how it plays, because DCIFF obviously is showing tons of stories about different things, and that's really awesome. And like I don't want people like, oh, it's about the Holocaust, so it has to be a Jewish film. But I really think that in the setting, the world is that, but really this story can be like a universal understanding of characters, and also again like the female aspect of it, which what in the process of making it, I also was thinking about, and like when this is a finished product, how do I want to show it to the world? And I didn't want to be like, this is only this. Like it literally can be something that people from all different places can think and understand. It doesn't have to be like, remember this. It's like, think about it in every aspect of how there's plenty of, unfortunately, places where this is happening now. So
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for your time with us. And how can we follow your journey and your film's journey?
So probably the best place to go, I actually just updated my website, is my website, which is my name, michaelmasarof.com. All the links are there, so when you click on it, but also my Instagram and Facebook handle for the film is it's a long one, The Woman from Hamburg short film. And I'm my social media, which is huge. I have thousands of followers now. I think I'm at 613. No, but my social media handle is MJ Masarof. Every time you like something, you get a free sandwich. So
perfect. I can follow you right now. Well, thank you again. Such a fun conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
This podcast is brought to you by the DCIFF supporters. We could not be here without all of you to be sharing this amazing outlet with filmmakers from around the world. If you are interested in supporting DCIFF, head on over to our website through the link description in the bio of this episode, or you can go right to the website, which is DCIFF-INDIE.org, to connect with us and learn more about our Future of Film programs, our festival, and also more educational opportunities in what we do with our high school students, community, and beyond. We look forward to your support.